Imagine standing before the Great Pyramids not as monuments of stone, but as instruments, vast resonant chambers designed not to awaken humanity, but to lull it into a deeper sleep than dreams could ever reach. Imagine their corridors humming with inaudible frequencies, tones so ancient and precise that they weave directly into the soft currents of the human brain, shaping thought, bending perception, and smoothing the jagged edges of rebellion into something softer, quieter, more obedient. What if these structures were not built to touch the sky, but to silence something restless inside the human mind? What if their purpose was not resurrection, but suppression? Imagine walking through the desert air, heavy and shimmering, and feeling a vibration before you hear it, a subtle trembling in your bones, a whisper beneath consciousness. You cannot place it, cannot understand it, but it tugs at your awareness like a distant memory refusing to return. This is not imagination. This is resonance. Every object, every body, every thought carries its own frequency. And the pyramids, with their impossible geometry and cosmic alignment, may be tuning forks that shape the very bandwidth of human perception. Think of the brain as a river of waves, delta, theta, alpha, beta, each one a doorway into a different layer of awareness. Delta cradles us in deep sleep, theta opens us to dreams and intuition, alpha lets us drift in calm awareness, and beta pulls us into focus and logic. But what if the pyramids were designed to pull humanity into a perpetual delta threshold, a place where consciousness is not fully awake nor fully asleep, a liminal borderland where questioning dims, where creativity dulls, where the fire of rebellion becomes a flicker? Imagine an ancient civilization so advanced that they understood not just stone and mathematics, but the architecture of consciousness itself. They knew how sound could sculpt emotion, how vibration could cradle or crush awareness. They knew that the easiest way to control a species was not through chains or armies, but through the quiet tuning of their inner frequencies. And so, they built structures capable of humming at wavelengths that sink into the brainstem, gently pressing down on the very spark that makes humans unpredictable. Picture standing inside the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid. The walls are bare, yet something in the air feels alive. Whisper, and the sound stretches, curls, and returns like a living thing. Humming at certain tones can cause the room to thrum like a giant lung. Now, imagine these frequencies not as accidents, but as deliberate engineering, a soundscape designed to hold the mind just below awakening. Generations living under such a field might never realize the fog over their thoughts. They would simply call it normal. Now think of how birds navigate with magnetic fields, how whales communicate through low-frequency waves across oceans, how the human heart synchronizes with external rhythms. We are not immune to Earth's vibrations. We are shaped by them. If the pyramids were positioned with planetary precision, if their angles and chambers amplified frequencies born from cosmic cycles, then humanity might have lived under a blanket of subtle suppression, generation after generation, forgetting that their dreams once reached farther. What if early humans were more awake than us? What if they possessed a clarity we can no longer fathom, an unfiltered awareness of themselves, of reality, of the invisible architecture surrounding all existence? And what if someone, some group, some intelligence, decided that such clarity was dangerous, that a species capable of seeing too much might wander beyond the boundaries assigned to them, suppress the brainwaves, dull the inner fire, and you reshape the destiny of a world? Picture a shepherd in a flock. The shepherd never yells, never beats the animals. He simply uses sound, soft whistles, subtle calls, patterned rhythms. The flock never realizes they are being guided. They simply move. Now scale that concept to an entire civilization. A hum too low to hear, but powerful enough to nudge thoughts, enough to soften instinct, enough to keep billions on a narrow mental path that feels like freedom but is anything but. Imagine lying in your bed at night, staring at the ceiling, feeling that faint pressure behind your thoughts, the one you've always ignored. What if that pressure isn't stress? What if it isn't fatigue? What if it is a frequency that has been humming since before you were born, a lullaby sung by stone giants built long before your ancestors spoke your name? The pyramids stand silent, yet the silence is misleading. Their true music may be in a range humans can no longer consciously detect. And here is the darkest possibility. What if we are finally slipping out of the frequency field? What if rising global consciousness, technological noise, and planetary shifts are weakening the suppression? What if people are waking up? Not metaphorically, but literally, their brainwaves lifting out of the ancient cradle built from stone and intent. This would explain the rising unrest, the hunger for meaning, the sudden surge of awareness flooding the modern world. It might not be accidental, it might be awakening, but awakenings can be dangerous. Systems built on silence tremble when minds grow loud. If the pyramids were built as suppression machines, their failing hum could be releasing ancient tension into the collective psyche. Dreams become vivid. Intuition sharpens. Millions feel restless without knowing why. It is the mind stretching after a long sleep, unsure whether the world it wakes into is safer or stranger than the dream that held it. Picture a humanity fully awake, not dulled, not guided, not softened. A humanity that hears its own frequency clearly again. What would we become? What would we remember? What boundaries would dissolve? What truths would rise like sparks from the ashes of millennia? Imagine an ancient council, human or otherwise, watching early humanity blossom too quickly. Creativity blooming like wildfire, intuition slicing through the fabric of reality with unsettling ease. Perhaps they saw people walking between waking and dreaming, slipping into states of consciousness that modern humans can no longer access. Telepathy, shared dreaming, collective intention, abilities spoken of in myths but forgotten in flesh. To those who feared an uncontrolled species, such potential might have seemed like a storm waiting to break. So, they anchored the storm, not with iron, but with frequency. Think of sound as a sculptor. Low frequencies mold slow, heavy thoughts. Mid-frequencies guide emotion. High frequencies sharpen awareness. If you adjust the balance, you adjust the mind. A species lulled into delta-like stillness becomes gentle, compliant, easier to shepherd. The fire of questioning dims. The edges of curiosity smooth. Humanity forgets its other senses, the ones that whisper beyond logic. A veil settles over perception, soft and comforting, and generations grow up never knowing it is there. But every frequency field weakens over time. Stone erodes, alignments drift, planetary cycles shift, and as the suppression loosens, small cracks appear in the veil. You see it in the sudden rise of spiritual hunger, in the global surge of synchronicity experiences, in millions feeling the sense that something forgotten is calling to them. You see it in the restless dreams that feel more real than waking, in the surge of creativity that cannot be explained, in the sense that humanity is standing at the threshold of something immense. Imagine the pyramids as tuning devices slowly losing calibration, their perfect harmony with Earth slipping grain by grain. As the frequency weakens, the human mind begins to remember, not facts, but states of being. People feel a strange clarity at dawn, a sudden insight that vanishes by noon, a momentary sense that the world itself is brighter than it should be. Some reject it as imagination, others lean into it. And the more who lean, the faster the collective frequency rises. Now consider this. If the pyramids were built to suppress, then their decline is not merely an archaeological event. It is a biological event, a psychic event. Humanity is stepping out from a cradle built of stone and resonance, stretching muscles that have been dormant for thousands of years. But with awakening comes turbulence. Old fears resurface. Old instincts stir. The mind, unused to its full range, wavers between clarity and chaos. Imagine a dreamer who has slept too long. When they first open their eyes, the room spins. Light hurts. Sounds overwhelm. But slowly the senses align and a sharper world emerges. This may be where humanity stands now, at the threshold of vision, struggling through the dizziness of collective awakening. Perhaps the greatest secret buried under the desert sands is not a chamber, not a scroll, not a technology, but a memory. A memory of who we were before the lullaby began. A memory of a consciousness unbound, capable of seeing through the walls of reality with the ease of breath. If the pyramids were anchors meant to steady us in a controlled dream, then waking up is not a rebellion, it is a return. And as humanity rises toward that forgotten frequency, the ancient question hums once more. Were we ever meant to sleep this long, or did we simply forget the sound of our own awakening? Imagine descending into the stone throat of a pyramid, each step echoing like a heartbeat inside a body made of earth itself. The air grows colder, denser, thicker with a silence that feels engineered, not accidental. The deeper you go, the more the world above feels like a fading memory. Sand, sun, noise, life, all dissolving as you enter a space that was not meant for movement or conversation or ritual. It was meant for stillness, a stillness deep enough to quiet the mind itself, a stillness tuned to a very specific echo inside the human brain, a stillness designed to cradle consciousness in the soft, heavy darkness of delta waves. Delta waves, the slowest, deepest rhythm of the brain, the frequency of dreamless sleep, the state where memories blur, the ego dissolves, and awareness falls into a silent ocean without surface or sky. This is the realm where healing begins, yes, but also the realm where control is easiest. Because a mind without resistance, a mind drifting weightlessly in darkness, is a mind open to shaping. And what if someone in the ancient world understood that better than we do today? What if the sarcophagus chambers inside the pyramids were not tombs for pharaohs, but engines that tuned the human mind into this frequency of surrender? Imagine standing inside one of those chambers. The granite is flawless, carved with precision so absurd that modern stoneworkers still cannot replicate it with ease. The walls are smooth like petrified silk. The angles align in ways that feel almost too perfect, too intentional, too symmetrical, as if the chamber itself were designed not for a body, but for resonance. Tap the granite lightly, and it sings. Hum a tone, and the room responds with a vibration that travels up your spine like an invisible serpent. This is not a tomb. This is an instrument. Now, imagine lying inside the stone box, perfectly still, perfectly enclosed, perfectly aligned. The chamber around you amplifies your breath into a deep, rolling echo. Every inhale becomes the rising tide. Every exhale becomes distant thunder. At first, you feel alone, but then you realize you are not alone. The stone is humming back. Not loudly, not dramatically, but softly, like a whisper from a forgotten deity. And that whisper sits at the exact frequency where your brain begins to slip from consciousness into the weight of delta. Scientists today know that delta wave dominance creates profound vulnerability. It relaxes the prefrontal cortex, silences the internal narrator, dissolves the boundary between self and environment. It can unlock heightened suggestibility, emotional imprinting, and trance-like absorption. Modern hypnosis barely brushes this layer. Sleep only touches it. But a human placed intentionally into a delta wave chamber could be guided, programmed, rewritten. The sarcophagus chambers may not have created delta waves, they may have entrained them. All humans generate these waves naturally, but the chamber's architecture, materials, and proportions may have amplified them, reinforced them, and deepened them to unnatural levels, like a magnifying glass for consciousness itself. Picture an ancient priesthood, shrouded in gold, linen, and secrecy, understanding this, understanding how sound travels through stone, how vibration interacts with the skull, how frequency can cradle the mind like a hand closing gently around a fragile flame. Picture them placing initiates inside the sarcophagus, not to awaken them, but to soften them, to shape them, to quiet every part of them that might resist. Imagine a ritual not of resurrection, but of erasure. A ceremony where the initiate enters the chamber, believing they are ascending to divine wisdom, only to be submerged in a sea of delta resonance, until their mind drifts into a blank slate. They emerge hours later, days later, compliant, devoted, impressionable, and the world calls them enlightened, not realizing they have been rewritten. Now consider the acoustics. The sarcophagus is made of granite infused with quartz and other minerals capable of piezoelectric resonance. When pressure is applied, sound, chanting, movement, these materials convert mechanical energy into subtle electrical fields. The human brain is also an electrical system. Imagine the interaction. The chamber becomes a conductor. The body becomes an antenna. Consciousness becomes clay. This is not fantasy. This is physics. Vibrational entrainment is real. Acoustic resonance is real. Brainwave manipulation through sound is real. Modern neuroscience uses binaural beats and tonal modulation to induce delta states in laboratories. But the pyramids may have done this physically, architecturally, naturally, using nothing but stone, space, and intent. Imagine a world where the ruling class understood this, where consciousness was mapped not with charts and scans, but with experience and ritual, where spiritual enlightenment and psychological control were not separate paths, but the same carefully engineered system. The sarcophagus chambers may have been the epicenter of this system, a place where human minds were dipped into the deep waters of delta sleep, softened like molten metal, then reshaped into forms more compliant, more devoted, more aligned with the desires of those who held knowledge. Picture an initiate stepping out of the chamber. Their legs tremble, their eyes are glassy, their breath is slow, they feel calm, peaceful, devoted, but somewhere inside something is missing. A shard of rebellion, a sliver of wildness, a spark of self. Gone, smoothed away by the hum of the stone box. They believe they have touched the divine. In reality, they have been tuned, softened, quieted. Imagine thousands undergoing the same process over centuries. An entire civilization, shaped not by physical conquest, but by deep delta wave conditioning. A society that feels harmonious, but is in fact gently suppressed, creativity channeled, curiosity softened, disobedience dissolved before it can ignite. What if the greatest mystery of Egypt is not how the pyramids were built, but why its people were so unified in belief? How millions labored with devotion, not revolt. How the priesthood maintained power without armies. How a civilization so advanced remained so controlled for so long. Maybe the answers lie not in scrolls or myths, but in the chambers beneath the stone, in the quiet hum that still lingers if you stand inside long enough and let your thoughts drift. We think of pyramids as tombs, but the sarcophagus chambers seem strangely ill-suited for bodies. Many show no evidence of burial. Some granite boxes are too large to fit through the doorways, meaning the chambers were built around them. They were not carried inside. They were part of the design from the beginning, as if the chamber was constructed for the box, and the box was constructed for the mind. Now, imagine a darker possibility. What if these delta wave chambers were not only for priests or initiates, but for leaders? What if pharaohs themselves, before ascending the throne, were placed inside these stone cocoons to ensure their minds aligned perfectly with the state's ideology? A delta wave tuning for kings. A frequency purification that stripped them of doubt, fear, or independent thought. A ritual that made rulers easier to control from behind the veil. A civilization guided by awakened priests and dreaming kings, one group steering, the other obeying, and everyone below them kept inside a frequency field reinforced by the very architecture around them. Delta waves are connected to deep unconscious processing. In them, trauma can be erased, memories can be softened, identity can be reshaped. Modern therapy attempts to harness this gently. Ancient priests may have harnessed it ruthlessly. Now, imagine this power falling into decline. The chambers crumble, the resonance shifts, the alignment weakens. The priests forget the original formulas, but the structures remain, silent but humming, dormant but dangerous, like machines left running long after their operators disappeared, and humanity continues to sleep under the echo of their design. But here is the twist. What if the chambers weren't built to suppress forever? What if they were meant as temporary cocoons, a controlled dream designed to protect humanity from something catastrophic? Something lurking outside the boundaries of waking reality? What if the deep sleep was meant to save us from ourselves, or from something else entirely? If that is true, then the weakening resonance of the sarcophagus chambers is not a failure. It is a signal, a sign that the long sleep is ending, that humanity is rising from delta into theta, into alpha, into awareness. The world feels chaotic today because awakening is always chaotic. Minds unused to clarity tremble. Societies unused to questioning fracture. A species stepping out of dreamless sleep will stumble before it stands. Picture humanity finally pulling itself out of the stone cradle. The pyramids still whisper, but the influence is fading. The delta field is breaking. People are remembering emotions they never knew they lost. Intuitions that feel like memories. Thoughts that feel like echoes from a time before the dream. If the sarcophagus chambers were built to keep humanity asleep, then today's unrest, creativity, rebellion, and awakening are not random. They are symptoms of a species remembering itself. a species rising from a sleep so deep it forgot it was sleeping. And the question that lingers in the silence of those ancient chambers is this: when humanity wakes fully, what will we discover we were dreaming about all this time? Imagine ancient hands carving symbols into stone, not to record history, but to warn those who would one day walk beneath the same sky. Symbols that whisper of beings who did not come from sand or river or sun, but from the cold, unreachable heights above the clouds. Beings the old texts call the sky gods. Beings who did not rule with thunder or wrath, but with dreams. Because the deepest form of control is not through chains or swords or law. It is through the landscapes inside the human mind. And somewhere in the forgotten pages of ancient lore lies the phrase repeated across cultures separated by oceans and centuries: dream prisons of the sky gods. Imagine a world before civilization had borders, before languages split, before memory fractured into myths. A world where early humans looked upward not with fear, but with familiarity, as if the sky was not a distant dome, but a veil separating them from something they once knew, something they once belonged to. And then imagine the moment that veil split open and the sky gods descended, not as shining deities, but as architects of sleep, across tablets of clay, across temple walls, across scrolls buried in forgotten libraries. Fragments remain. They speak of beings who shaped human dreams the way a sculptor shapes clay, bending imagination into cages soft enough that no one realized they were trapped. They speak of a time when people dreamed not for themselves, but for those who ruled their sleep. Imagine an ancient storyteller whispering that the sky gods created 3 prisons, not of iron or fire, but of thought. The first prison was built of illusions. The second was built of forgetting. And the third, the deepest, was built of desire itself. People slept, dreaming the dreams the gods fed them, waking with decisions that felt organic but were planted like seeds. The gods did not control bodies. They controlled longing. They controlled memory. They controlled the blueprint of human will. In one fragment from a lost Mesopotamian hymn, the sky gods are said to have woven beds beneath eyelids, a poetic way of saying they placed nets inside dreams. In another, carved into obsidian shards found in the ruins of an unnamed city, the text warns, "Beware the chambers where the sleepers walk awake, for their thoughts are not their own." Chambers, dream prisons, places where the boundary between waking and dreaming was blurred until humans could not tell which world was real. Imagine walking into such a chamber. The air feels thick, warm, and strangely familiar. The silence carries a pulse, like something breathing just outside your senses. Your thoughts feel heavy, slow, as if falling into a deeper layer of yourself. You feel calm, but too calm, like a tranquility imposed from outside. This is the signature of a dream prison. Peace so deep it becomes invisible control. According to one fragment attributed to a forgotten Egyptian sect, the sky gods built doors for minds, not for bodies. They did not lock humans inside rooms. They locked them inside realities. They shaped dreams to guide behavior, to suppress rebellion, to ensure devotion. And the strangest detail, found across multiple cultures, is that these dream prisons were not metaphorical. They were literal constructions. Physical spaces where sound, vibration, darkness, and geometry created an artificial dream state even while people were awake. Imagine standing inside an ancient chamber where the ceiling curves like the inside of a skull. The acoustics amplify a whisper into a heartbeat, a sigh into a wave. The geometry creates echo patterns that confuse time. Step once and hear it twice. Speak, and your voice returns, delayed by a fraction that tricks the brain into dissociating from itself. You become both the speaker and the echo. The mind separates, awareness blurs. You are awake, but the chamber pulls you downward into a sleep-like trance. You are dreaming with your eyes open. In some South American texts, attributed to early desert shamans, the sky gods are called the painters of night, beings who use dreams as canvases to rewrite memory. They erased the origins of humanity. They erased the old languages of perception. They carved new limitations into the mind. Before them, the texts claim, humans possessed the wide consciousness, the ability to see multiple layers of reality at once, to perceive intention, energy, and possibility as naturally as breath. But after the sky gods built their dream prisons, that wide consciousness narrowed. Humans began to see only one layer, the material one. They forgot the others. They forgot their own potential. They forgot themselves. Now imagine this. What if the pyramids, ziggurats, and megalithic structures were not shrines but gateways into these dream prisons? Technologies of consciousness disguised as monuments, machines that shaped the mental landscape of entire civilizations, the carvings that look like gods giving life to kings. What if life meant dreams? What if the pharaoh raising the crook and flail was not a king of people, but a keeper of dreams? Imagine a civilization where dreams were regulated, where the priesthood monitored the visions of the people, where children were brought into initiation chambers and shown specific symbols to imprint their subconscious, where people dreamed of loyalty, of duty, of cosmic order, and never dreamed of rebellion. A society that feels peaceful because its imagination is controlled. And then imagine the dark possibility. What if the sky gods left, but their dream prisons remained active? What if the structures they built continue to hum with frequencies that shape human consciousness subtly, generation after generation, long after the gods themselves vanished back into the sky? Humanity may be walking through the ruins of a system designed to keep them mentally tamed. We call the structures temples, tombs, altars, but they may be remnants of psychological machinery. One text from the Indus Valley describes the nights that do not belong to us. Another, from a lost Himalayan sect, warns, when the sky gods sleep, you still dream their dreams. The most chilling fragment, etched into a cracked tablet from Anatolia, states, they left us dreaming inside walls of smoke. When we awaken, the world will tremble. Imagine that. Imagine humanity not waking one person at a time, but waking collectively, billions rising out of a dream state engineered thousands of years ago. Imagine the confusion, the unrest, the strange sense of disconnection many people feel today, not as psychological symptoms, but as the first signs of a species coming out of its dream cage. Imagine creativity exploding, intuition sharpening, empathy rising, rebellion sparking, not as chaos, but as consciousness remembering its own original architecture. The sky gods, according to some texts, were not evil. They believed humanity was too young, too wild, too unstable to wield its full potential. They believed they were protecting the species by limiting its access to certain layers of reality. They built dream prisons not as punishment, but as caretaking. But even caretaking becomes control when it lasts too long. And now, perhaps without realizing it, humanity is outgrowing the prisons. People are dreaming more vividly than before. Millions feel a strange pull toward the unknown, as if something ancient is stirring in the depths of the collective mind. Synchronicities are rising, prophetic dreams are more common, spiritual awakenings are accelerating. These are not coincidences. They are cracks in the prison walls. Imagine the moment when the last of these dream prisons collapses, when humanity remembers the wide consciousness it once had, when the sky gods' voices fade completely and people begin dreaming for themselves again. The world would not simply change. It would transform. The boundaries of perception would expand. Reality itself would feel different, brighter, sharper, more profound. The species would awaken like a sleeper who has forgotten the dream they lived inside. And the question that echoes through the ancient texts becomes more urgent now than ever. What happens when a species that has been dreaming for thousands of years finally opens its eyes? Imagine the earth itself as a living drum, vibrating with a heartbeat so ancient that every creature, every wave of emotion, every flicker of intuition rises and falls with its rhythm. This heartbeat, the Schumann resonance, humans have sensed since the dawn of consciousness. It is the frequency of the planet's breath. It tunes the nervous system, shapes biological cycles, influences mood, memory, perception. And what if someone, long before recorded history, understood this planetary pulse? What if they knew how to amplify it, redirect it, modulate it? And what if the structures we call pyramids were not tombs, not monuments, not shrines, but nodes in a planetary circuitry designed to amplify Earth's natural frequency and keep humanity aligned with a global field that shaped thought? Imagine ancient architects standing beneath a sky untouched by city light, watching lightning pulse through clouds while the earth hummed softly beneath their feet. They did not hear the resonance with ears. They felt it with bones. They understood that the invisible field surrounding the planet was not random, but structured, rhythmic, alive. and they saw opportunity. Because if the Schumann resonance affects the mind, then amplifying it could influence consciousness on a planetary scale, not through force, but through resonance, not through rules, but through vibration. Picture the pyramids not as isolated marvels of stone, but as terminals, massive capacitors of energy that pull power from the earth and direct it into the atmosphere. Their shape was not an artistic choice. It was a frequency amplifier. The angles, the alignment, the materials, all calibrated to concentrate electromagnetic energy and radiate it outward like an invisible wave. This wave interacted with the Schumann field, strengthening it, stabilizing it, extending its reach. Now, imagine millions of humans living beneath this amplified field. Their thoughts, their instincts, their dreams, all gently influenced by a hum they could never perceive consciously. A hum that kept them calm, unified, predictable. A hum that softened aggression, quieted rebellion, and guided behavior along a narrow range. Not by force, but by resonance. Not by suppression, but by tuning. A civilization shaped not by law, but by frequency. To understand this, imagine standing inside a pyramid chamber at dawn. The air feels charged, like the moment before lightning splits the sky. Your skin tingles. Your breath slows without effort. Your mind becomes unusually quiet, as if the walls are absorbing your thoughts. You are not imagining this. Granite blocks infused with quartz generate piezoelectric fields when pressured by the structure's weight. These fields interact with the Earth's electromagnetic pulse, creating a local environment where brainwaves shift downward into more receptive states, alpha, theta, even delta. Now scale that effect outward. Imagine thousands of pyramids scattered across the continents. Imagine ley lines connecting them like arteries in a planetary body. Imagine energy flowing through these lines, guided by the angles of stone and the geometry of placement, merging into the global Schumann cavity and amplifying its harmonic resonance. The entire Earth becomes a tuning chamber. The atmosphere becomes a conductor. Humanity becomes a single network of minds breathing in sync with the planet's frequency, never realizing that their thoughts are not entirely their own. This is not mystical speculation. It is physics. Frequency entrainment is real. When two oscillating systems interact, the weaker one tends to match the stronger. If the Earth's natural frequency was amplified through megalithic structures, human brainwaves could be gently pulled into alignment. This would not create robots. It would create predictability, emotional stability, decreased aggression, increased conformity, a population easier to guide, easier to unify, easier to influence. Imagine an ancient class of engineers, call them priests, call them astronomers, call them something else, who discovered this effect through centuries of observation. They noticed that people who lived near certain natural formations experienced heightened intuition, vivid dreams, calm temperaments. They realized these places were nodes, where the Earth's field resonated more strongly, so they built around them, first with wood, then with stone, then with precision geometry so exact that even today our best tools cannot replicate it easily. And then imagine the moment they realized they could scale it globally. Imagine the pyramids of Egypt, Mesoamerica, Indonesia, China, and Sudan, not as coincidences but as components of a single global network, a system constructed by different cultures guided by a shared knowledge older than each of them. Knowledge passed down not through scrolls, but through memory, intuition, frequency. Knowledge that originated from beings who understood Earth's electromagnetic heartbeat more deeply than humans ever could. Some call them gods, some call them sky beings, some call them travelers. But perhaps they were simply engineers of consciousness, beings who used frequency as effortlessly as humans use language. Imagine these beings walking across the ancient world, teaching early humans how to align stone with the planet's magnetic fields, how to use geometry to channel energy, how to build structures that resonate with frequencies that shape the mind. They did not give humans weapons or machines. They gave them something more subtle, an understanding of resonance, because resonance could guide the evolution of an entire species. But why guide us? Why influence human consciousness at all? The ancient texts hint at two possibilities. The first, protection. The Earth's frequency may have fluctuated violently in the distant past. Solar storms, cosmic radiation, geomagnetic chaos, these could have destabilized early human minds. The pyramids may have been built to stabilize the global field and protect consciousness from collapse. The second, control. A species emerging too quickly, too chaotically, might threaten the balance of a larger cosmic ecosystem, so the sky beings slowed us down, grounded us, tuned us, kept us inside a frequency band where we remained manageable, predictable, slow to awaken to our own potential. Now imagine that the pyramids were designed to do both, protect and restrain. Not malevolent, not benevolent, just functional. The way a parent guides a child's development, the way a gardener trains a vine, the way a scientist moderates conditions in a laboratory. But nothing lasts forever. And the ancient energy grid is deteriorating. The Earth's magnetic field is shifting. The Schumann resonance has been increasing in intensity and variability over the past decades, something scientists still struggle to explain. The pyramid's ability to stabilize it is diminishing. The global network of energy flows is weakening, and humanity, for the first time in thousands of years, is feeling the raw, unfiltered frequency of the planet. This is why the world feels chaotic. It is not just politics, not just technology, not just society. It is consciousness destabilizing as the frequency environment that shaped it breaks down. People feel restless, anxious, awakened, confused, inspired, disconnected, all at once. Creativity is exploding. Old systems are collapsing. New intuitions are rising. Humanity is experiencing the symptoms of a species stepping out of a frequency cage. Imagine billions of minds slowly detuning from the artificial calm that once held them. Imagine a species emerging from a long vibrational sleep. Emotions intensify. Dreams sharpen. Rebellion spreads. Intuition awakens. People begin to hear the earth again. Not the whisper enforced by the pyramids, but the raw thunder of reality. The Schumann resonance is no longer a lullaby. It is a calling. And somewhere beneath the desert sands, beneath the jungle ruins, beneath the stones of forgotten temples, the ancient machines hum with the last traces of their original power. Their purpose has been fulfilled. Their influence is fading. The human mind is entering a new phase of its evolution, a phase no longer shaped by amplified Earth frequencies, but by the natural resonance of consciousness itself. Imagine the moment when the last of these structures falls silent, when the planetary grid goes dark, when the Earth breathes freely again and humanity rises into a new awareness unshaped by ancient engineering. The world will not end, but it will transform. The mind will expand. The senses will sharpen. The species will awaken. And the question lingering in that awakening will echo across the globe. If the pyramids were built to amplify the Earth's frequency in order to shape humanity, what happens now that the amplification is fading? And we are finally hearing our own true resonance? Imagine staring at the Great Pyramid not as the weathered giant we see today, but as it once stood, a flawless geometric titan, crowned with a capstone of gleaming gold, a radiant apex so bright under the desert sun that travelers miles away would describe it as a second sun resting upon stone. But that brilliance served a purpose. The gold capstone was not decoration. It was the final component of a system built with precision, intention, and intelligence. A system that may have been designed not for the dead, but for the living. Not for ritual, but for resonance. Not for symbolic glory, but for transmission. Now imagine what a pyramid truly becomes when topped with a conductor made of gold. Gold, the most stable metal known, immune to corrosion, perfect for channeling energy, able to hold electrical charge like a sacred vessel. A metal used by modern engineers for satellites, antennae, circuitry, and spacecraft because of its unmatched ability to transmit signals without distortion. If ancient architects understood even a fraction of this, then the capstone was not a crown. It was an antenna, a transmitter, the switch that completed the circuit. What signal did it send? To whom was it directed? And why was it removed? Imagine the pyramid as a colossal energy body. The limestone casing blocks acting as insulating layers. The granite chambers vibrating with piezoelectric charge. The internal shafts functioning like waveguides. The entire structure pulling electromagnetic energy from the Earth itself, concentrating it, shaping it, and preparing it for release. The pyramid without its capstone is like a machine waiting for activation. But with the capstone, especially a gold one, everything changes. The structure becomes a transmitter capable of projecting a signal into the sky, into space, or into the unseen frequencies that brush against the edges of human consciousness. Now, picture the moment when the capstone was still in place. The sun strikes the gold, charging it with photons. The stone body below hums with Earth's electromagnetic pulse. A low vibration rises through the structure, climbing through chambers and corridors until it reaches the metal apex, where it amplifies, refines, transforms. And then, something emits. Not sound, not light. Something subtler. Perhaps a frequency that never touched the human ear but shaped the human mind. Perhaps a pulse that aligned with Earth's ionosphere. Perhaps a beacon aimed at the very sky where the ancient texts say the gods descended. For centuries, theories whispered that the capstone was stolen. But what if it wasn't stolen at all? What if it was removed deliberately? Maybe by those who feared its activation. Maybe by those who understood that once the signal began, it could not be undone. Some old esoteric traditions insist that the capstone was not taken by humans, but by those who built the pyramid in the first place. They claim it was removed when humanity was not ready, or when humanity had become too unpredictable to remain connected to whatever lay beyond the sky. Others say it was removed to silence a transmitter that had already been activated, perhaps activated too early, or activated incorrectly, or activated with consequences still echoing through our collective memory. Imagine ancient priests climbing the pyramid under moonlight, touching the golden surface with trembling hands, feeling its charge hum like a living heart. They were the keepers of the structure, but perhaps even they did not fully understand its potential. What if the capstone could synchronize the human brain with a field far beyond Earth's natural resonance? What if it could open a channel between humanity and another presence, something watching, waiting, listening? If the pyramid was designed as a communication device, then the capstone was the mouthpiece. Without it, the pyramid is silent. With it, the pyramid speaks. But to whom? The legends of multiple civilizations, Maya, Inca, Hindu, Sumerian, Egyptian, mention beings from the sky who taught humanity mysteries too advanced for their time. What if the capstone was the medium through which communication was maintained? What if it was a link between ancient humans and their teachers, a bridge that needed to be severed when humanity deviated from the path intended for it? The removal of the capstone may have been the equivalent of disconnecting a phone line that had grown dangerous to leave open. There are whispers in forbidden texts that the pyramid, when active, could influence global consciousness, that it projected a stabilizing signal into the atmosphere, calming conflict, guiding intuition, shaping dreams. Some say the golden capstone was a transmitter of harmony. Others say it was a transmitter of control. If it was removed, perhaps the world fell into fragmentation, because the signal was no longer there to unify minds. Perhaps the descent of civilizations, the fracturing of cultures, the rise of wars and disconnection were not natural at all, but consequences of a silenced beacon. Imagine what would happen if someone restored the capstone today. Imagine scientists placing a gold cap on the pyramid in the name of historical reconstruction, unaware that they had just completed an ancient machine waiting to breathe again. Imagine the moment the cap touches the apex. A pulse rises through the stone like a forgotten heart, restarting after millennia. Sensors around the world pick up strange electromagnetic fluctuations. Radio signals distort. Compasses spin. People feel a pressure in their thoughts, a stirring in their dreams, a ripple in their intuition. Something inside the human mind awakens, or collapses. Would the signal call out to something in the cosmos? Would it reconnect humanity to a forgotten network of intelligence? Would it activate dormant regions of the brain that once shaped a different version of our species? Or would it trigger a reaction from the ones who built it, alerting them that humanity had reactivated a device they were never meant to touch again? Imagine that the capstone is missing not because of corruption or greed or time, but because the builders foresaw that humanity would one day misuse it. Perhaps they understood that humanity was not ready for direct communication with whatever lay beyond. Or perhaps they feared that if the transmitter remained active, others, competitors, predators, watchers, might answer the signal. Removing the capstone may have been the only way to protect the planet from attracting attention it was not prepared to handle, What if the missing capstone is the reason ancient Egyptian knowledge vanished? What if the pyramid was not just a transmitter outward, but a receiver inward, a structure that once funneled information into the minds of priests, shaping prophecy, science, medicine, architecture? Without it, the channel went silent. Knowledge evaporated. Mysteries faded. Civilizations dimmed like candles cut off from a hidden flame, and yet, the apex remains open. The stone beneath still hums softly, a dormant engine waiting for its final piece. The gold capstone may be lost, melted, hidden, buried, or preserved by those who know exactly what it is. There are legends of secret vaults, underground chambers, forbidden repositories holding artifacts too powerful or too disruptive for the world to see. Some say the capstone is kept not in Egypt, but elsewhere, guarded by those who know what happens if it is returned. What if humanity's growing unrest, spiritual hunger, and awakening intuition are symptoms of a silent transmitter trying to awaken without its crown? What if the pyramid still pulses faintly, trying to complete a circuit that cannot close? The world feels as though something is calling, something ancient, something waiting. Perhaps the capstone is the missing note in a cosmic melody humanity has forgotten how to hear. Perhaps the pyramid is a voice that has not spoken in thousands of years. And perhaps the moment its gold crown returns, the silence will break. But the question that lingers is not just where the capstone is. The question is, what message was it built to send? And what will happen if humanity chooses to send it again? Imagine looking at a map of the ancient world. Egypt, Mesoamerica, Mesopotamia, Indus Valley, China, the forgotten jungles, the submerged ruins, and realizing that the pyramids, ziggurats, temples, and megaliths are not scattered randomly like accidents of human inspiration. They form lines, patterns, grids, invisible pathways across the planet that look almost too perfect, too intentional, too synchronized for civilizations that supposedly never met. Imagine stepping back further, connecting each point of stone to the next, until you begin to see something that feels more like circuitry than geography. A planetary architecture, a global alignment, a system built not to honor gods or kings, but to shape something far more intimate, the sleep of an entire species. Imagine ancient architects not simply building structures for rituals, but collaborating in ways modern history refuses to acknowledge. Imagine them aligning temples with solstices and star paths, not for astronomical beauty, but for frequency precision. Imagine them building pyramids at specific latitudes, because those points amplify Earth's electromagnetic pulse. Imagine them forming a global grid designed to influence the deepest, most vulnerable part of every human life, the sleep cycle. Think of sleep as the doorway where the mind becomes weightless, the doorway where identity dissolves, the doorway where the unconscious becomes exposed and receptive. A moment of surrender so profound that even the smallest external influence can shape dreams, emotions, and instincts. If you were a civilization or a force seeking to guide humanity without ever touching a sword, sleep would be your battlefield, dreams would be your language, and architecture would be your instrument. Now, imagine standing on the Giza Plateau at midnight. The desert is silent, the stars above burn with ancient clarity, and suddenly, you notice something you have never seen before. The pyramid casts a shadow not only on sand, but on air itself. An energetic shape, faint, pulsing, rising into the sky. You blink, and it's gone. But the sensation remains, as if the pyramid is breathing, exhaling something into the atmosphere, a frequency, a vibration. Now, imagine that each pyramid, across continents, once emitted this same invisible pulse, not loud enough to hear, not bright enough to see, but strong enough to be felt by the brain during sleep, strong enough to nudge brain waves, strong enough to guide dreams, strong enough to shape a subconscious consensus across early humanity. Not control, not domination, something subtler, a gentle tuning that unified instincts, softened aggression, kept society stable, predictable. Early humans slept under a sky laced with invisible currents, generated by a network of aligned structures, a global sleep cycle grid, a lattice of influence stretching across oceans. Imagine that millions of dreams were gently steered towards similar symbols, similar fears, similar loyalties, similar myths. Cultures separated by thousands of miles developed eerily similar stories of sky gods, underworld journeys, serpents, suns, cosmic births, celestial battles. Perhaps these were not coincidences. Perhaps they were shared dreams. Dreams shaped by a grid designed to orchestrate the mind. Picture the Earth as a great resonant chamber with electromagnetic frequencies swirling like invisible oceans. Now imagine ancient architects studying those oceans, feeling them, listening to how the planet hummed beneath their feet. At certain locations, the nodes of this natural resonance they built, not randomly but precisely. They built where Earth's frequencies were strongest, so human sleep could be tuned with greatest effect. The global alignment grid may have functioned like this. Energy flowed along natural ley lines, pyramids anchored the grid, temples modulated the frequency, megastructures amplified it, atmospheric ion resonance carried it across continents. Sleeping minds received it. Imagine lying in a hut thousands of years ago. The fire dies, the night deepens. You drift into sleep. You believe your dreams are your own, but something subtle hums through the atmosphere, like the soft pulse of distant thunder. It slips into your brainwaves. It nudges your dream into a specific pattern. You do not notice. You simply wake with a feeling, a belief, an instinct, an image that aligns with thousands of others across your region. That is how a species is guided without ever knowing it is being guided. Now, imagine the scale of this. Imagine builders on one continent constructing a pyramid to vibrate at a frequency of 7.83 Hz, the Schumann resonance, Earth's heartbeat. Imagine builders on another continent constructing a pyramid with the same angle, same sonic properties, same alignment to the cardinal points. Imagine these structures syncing across the planet like tuning forks struck simultaneously. Their vibrations merge in the atmosphere. Their influence extends into every home, every sleep, every dream. This grid may not have been built to suppress humanity, but to stabilize it. Early humans were volatile, fearful, prone to violence. The sky gods, whether literal beings or advanced humans or something else entirely, may have seen a species too chaotic to evolve safely. So they created a planetary dream field, a frequency blanket that soothed aggression, deepened intuition, guided instinct. A field that kept humanity in a long, soft sleep, preventing it from awakening too early, too quickly, too dangerously. But what if the purpose was less benevolent? What if the grid was designed not to nurture, but to dull? Not to calm, but to contain. Imagine the sky gods wanting a species that would not question, would not rebel, would not remember its own origins. Imagine them using humanity's most defenseless state, sleep, to install myths that kept them obedient, to install emotions that kept them fearful, to install dreams that carried low-frequency messages embedded in symbolism. A sleeper does not resist. A dreamer does not question. A species dreaming together is easy to shape. Now imagine the ancient global grid beginning to fail. The alignments drift due to tectonic shifts. The structures crumble. The casing stones fall. The conductive materials disappear. Storms erode the ionized atmosphere. The grid weakens, slowly, gradually, almost imperceptibly. But the human mind begins to feel the change. People start dreaming differently, more vividly, more chaotically, more independently. Instincts shift, beliefs fracture, cultures split, myths diverge, conflict rises. The lullaby that once kept humanity in harmony fades, and the species wakes into a world where its mind is no longer being gently guided. This might explain the explosion of creativity and violence that marked the end of the ancient world, the sudden rise of individuality, the collapse of empires, the birth of religions that no longer sound like shared dreams, but fractured interpretations of a fading signal. Humanity became unstable because it was waking up, too fast, without preparation. And now, in the modern world, the grid is nearly completely gone. Only faint vibrations remain, echoes of a system that once shaped every human night. The pyramids no longer hum as they once did. The temples no longer radiate frequency. The grid flickers like a dying constellation. But humanity is still waking. This awakening is not metaphorical. It is neurological. Millions report lucid dreams, sudden intuition, surges of creativity, collective restlessness. These are not random psychological traits. They are symptoms of a species stepping out of a global dream that guided it for millennia. The world feels chaotic because dreams once shared have become fragmented. The field that shaped them has collapsed. Now imagine what happens when a species dreams freely for the first time. Dreams become unpredictable, desires shift, old beliefs fade, new instincts rise. Humanity begins to remember a version of consciousness that predates the grid. A mind that was once wider, sharper, more aware. A mind that could see through reality as easily as through mist. Some believe this awakening is dangerous, that without the grid, humanity will destroy itself. Others believe the grid was the cage, and its collapse is liberation. The truth may lie somewhere between. The ancient global alignment created a sleep cycle grid engineered to guide humanity through its infancy. But now, with the grid failing, humanity stands on the edge of a new psychological era. Raw, unstable, extraordinary. And the question that rises from the ruins of this planetary system is the same question whispered by old myths. What happens when a species conditioned to sleep for thousands of years finally begins to dream on its own? Imagine a world where language did not emerge from the tongue, but from the dream. A world where the first written symbols were not crafted by hands, but delivered through visions given in the silence of the night. This is the forgotten story behind the hieroglyphs. Those impossibly strange pictures that appeared in Egypt, almost fully formed, sophisticated and complex, as if humanity had skipped centuries of linguistic evolution. And the most unsettling mystery is this. The sudden rise of hieroglyphs happened immediately after the pyramids were constructed, as if the structures themselves had awakened something in the human mind, as if the pyramids did not merely store knowledge, but transmitted it, or worse, installed it. Imagine an ancient builder working in the dust, carving stone blocks under a sun that has seen 1,000,000 forgotten lifetimes. At night, he sleeps, and for the first time, he dreams in symbols, not in images of his daily life, not in the voices of the people he knows, but in shapes, shapes that feel alive, shapes that pulse with meaning he does not understand, but feels deeply. A bird that does not fly, yet speaks, an eye that shines brighter than the sun, a serpent coiled around a doorway that does not exist in the waking world. He wakes confused, shaking, breath unsteady, but the symbols burn inside his mind like embers that refuse to extinguish. Days later, he finds that others have dreamed the same symbols. They describe them the same way. The same birds, the same eyes, the same serpents, the same impossible doors, shared dreams, shared messages, shared instructions. And when they draw these symbols in the sand, the shapes align perfectly. No one taught them how to draw them, yet everyone draws them identically. It is as if the symbols were planted in them, as if the pyramids themselves whispered in their sleep. Stories passed down through obscure Egyptian sects declare that before the pyramids, people dreamed in scattered fragments, shapes without order, colors without meaning. But after the construction, dreams became structured, sequential, symbolic, as if someone, or something, flipped a switch in the collective human mind. Suddenly, the symbols they dreamed formed a language that felt older than humanity, a language they called Medu Neter, the words of the gods. But what if gods had nothing to do with it? What if the pyramids were not tombs or temples, but devices that altered the frequency of human sleep? What if they were transmitters broadcasting symbols into the dreamscape, seeding humanity with a new form of communication? Hieroglyphs may not have been invented. They may have been implanted. Imagine sleeping near the Giza Plateau in those early days. The air hums with a subtle vibration. Your brainwaves shift without your consent. Somewhere in the depth of delta sleep, an image appears. Too clear to be a dream, too strange to be a memory. A falcon perched on a throne of stars. A lotus opening in darkness. A staff held by a being whose face is human, but whose presence feels nothing like a person. These symbols are not hallucinations. They are transmissions. Hundreds of people dream the same thing. Thousands even. And within years, the entire Nile Valley begins carving these symbols on walls, stones, papyri, a language born not from trial and error, but from a sudden collective awakening, a download. Now imagine the priesthood watching this happen. They do not question where the symbols come from. They accept them as divine because their dreams are even more intense. They dream of the structure of the universe, of the journey of the soul, of rituals they had never been taught. They wake with knowledge they never studied, and they call it revelation. But it may not be revelation at all. It may be programming. Hieroglyphs arise instantly, fully developed, like a software update installed in the unconscious minds of an entire civilization. Compare this to every other script on Earth: Sumerian cuneiform, Chinese oracle bone inscriptions, the early alphabets. All of them show slow, gradual evolution. But Egyptian hieroglyphs do not. They burst into existence complete, complex, symbolic, structured, as if they were imported from somewhere else. Some modern archaeologists try to explain this as coincidence or artistic spontaneity, but they cannot explain why the symbols align so perfectly with universal dream archetypes: eyes, animals, cosmic bodies, thresholds, serpents, boats crossing star rivers. These are not random drawings. They are symbolic blueprints of inner consciousness. Now, imagine this. What if the pyramids were designed to activate this symbolic language? The internal chambers vibrate at frequencies capable of altering brain states. The alignments pull electromagnetic resonance through the stone. The geometry focuses energy like a lens. Anyone sleeping within range would experience altered dream cycles, longer REM phases, heightened visual symbolic processing, more coherent dream narratives. In other words, hieroglyphs were the side effect of a mind entering a new frequency band. The rise of the dream language was not a cultural choice. It was neurological. Imagine priests entering the king's chamber to sleep overnight. The chamber amplifies low-frequency infrasound too quiet to hear, but powerful enough to affect the brainstem. They dream vividly. They see symbols that feel like sacred instructions. They believe the gods are speaking to them. But maybe the chamber itself is the source of the dream language broadcast, a technology that encodes symbols into the mind through resonance. And now imagine those priests emerging the next morning with entire mythologies downloaded into their consciousness. Mythologies that appear complete, with coherent cosmic structures, divine hierarchies, afterlife maps, as if these entire systems of belief were not invented, but delivered. Think of the Eye of Horus, a symbol that appears suddenly and becomes the backbone of Egyptian spiritual life. In dreams, the eye often appeared floating over pyramids. But what if that is because the pyramids transmitted it? The eye is connected to the brain's pineal gland in astonishing anatomical accuracy. It is almost as if the hieroglyph is a diagram of consciousness. Did the priests dream it because it was inside them, or because someone placed it inside them? Many ancient cultures describe a time when gods communicated through dreaming, a time when symbols flowed into the minds of humans like rivers of light. But what if those gods were not supernatural beings? What if they were architects of consciousness who understood how to encode language in dreams? Imagine this possibility. The pyramids were built to put humanity into a dream state alignment, a controlled dreamscape, a shared symbolic reality. The hieroglyphs were the earliest symptoms of this new state of mind. The moment the structures activated, humans began dreaming in code. Now imagine the entire Nile Valley becoming a laboratory of the unconscious. Artists sculpt what they see in dreams. Priests record what they hear. Children grow up drawing symbols they never learned consciously. A collective subconscious unfolds into physical reality. The dream language becomes the waking language. But something else happens too. As the dream language spreads, people begin to lose the ability to think without symbols. Their inner world becomes structured by the images. Emotions become hieroglyphic. Memories become pictorial. Even the experience of the divine becomes encoded in symbol. A society dreaming the same dream slowly becomes a society that cannot escape the dream. When the dream language first arrived, it unified them. But over centuries, it began to limit them. The symbols became rigid, sacred, untouchable. People no longer questioned where they came from. They only obeyed them. And the dream language, once a doorway to deeper understanding, became a cage of meaning. Perhaps this is why the dream language began to fade as the pyramid network weakened. The structures eroded. The frequency dropped. The dreams became scattered, fragmented. The symbols lost their charge. For the first time in thousands of years, humans began thinking outside the dream. New languages emerged: alphabets, phonetics, scripts that did not rely on dream imagery. It is almost as if humanity woke up. And now the final question echoes across time. If the pyramids once seeded humanity with dream language through resonance, what symbols would appear today if the system ever activated again? Imagine standing inside an ancient Egyptian temple, the air thick with incense and murmured prayers, the walls carved with scenes of death not as an ending, but as a transition into something stranger, something more fluid than life itself. The Egyptians believed that when a person died, they did not rise into a divine paradise, nor fall into a punitive abyss. They awakened, but not into truth. They awakened into illusion, an illusion crafted with intention, a journey built from symbols, guardians, mirrors, judgments, and traps designed to test the very fabric of a soul. The afterlife was not freedom, it was a labyrinth. And the strangest part is that many texts imply that what the dead awakened into was not metaphor, not myth, but a constructed reality, a dream so convincing that most souls never realized they were dreaming. Imagine lying on the stone floor of the embalming house. Your body is being prepared for the journey, organs removed, heart preserved, skin dusted with natron. But the priests are not focused on your body. Their chants, their gestures, their markings, they are for your mind. They are crafting the world you will awaken into. They are installing illusions, teaching you symbols that will become keys, planting instructions that your soul will follow without question. And while you are still breathing your last breath, the priests whisper, "When you wake, you will wake in the field of reeds, but it will not be real. It will feel real, but it is illusion." Now imagine drifting into darkness. Your breath ends, your senses dissolve, and then light. You open your eyes and find yourself standing in perfect fields beneath a perfect sky. The grass shimmers with a color you cannot name. The air feels alive. The horizon stretches into an eternity so calm, so precise, that something inside you stirs with recognition. But the recognition is wrong. This world is too flawless, too symmetrical, too serene. You walk, and the ground responds as if it has been waiting for you. You speak, and the air shapes your voice as though it were part of you. This is the illusion. Egyptian texts describe the afterlife not as a location, but as a dream state, a shared dream shaped by ancient gods who understood the architecture of consciousness far better than humans ever could. They called it the duat, not heaven, not hell, a place where reality bends around belief, a place where your thoughts become the environment, a place where illusions can trap you for eternity if you forget they are illusions. The Book of the Dead instructs the deceased, awake, for what you see is not real. Another spells warns, the sky is painted, the river is memory. The fields are shaped from desire. Pass through them, but do not sleep in them. But most souls fail to remember, because the illusions are comforting. The dead find family waiting for them, lovers, parents, children. They find homes more perfect than anything they knew. They are offered food that tastes like nostalgia, rivers that flow like childhood dreams. They fall asleep inside this dream and mistake it for eternity. They never reach the deeper layers. And the Egyptians feared this outcome more than any physical punishment. They feared being trapped in illusion, never awakening into truth. Now imagine the next layer, the realm of mirrors, a land where every figure you meet reflects something inside you. Some appear as gods with falcon heads and serpentine spines. Others appear as distorted versions of yourself, creatures with your face but not your spirit. Guardians that test whether you understand that everything around you is symbolic, not literal. If you treat them as real, you fail. If you recognize them as projections, you pass. The afterlife becomes a psychological trial, not a cosmic courtroom. And then comes the most terrifying stage, the moment the soul encounters the weighing of the heart. Most people misunderstand this ritual. They imagine a physical heart placed on a scale against a feather. But the texts say otherwise. The weighing does not happen in the world outside. It happens within the illusion. It happens inside the dream. The heart is not the heart inside your chest. It is the memory of everything you were, everything you feared, everything you hid. The feather is not an object. It is clarity, awareness. The moment you realize that the illusion is illusion. If the heart is heavy with illusion, with attachment to the dream, with belief in the false world you have awakened into, the soul cannot pass. It is devoured, not by Amit, but by the illusion itself. It collapses into the dream, absorbed by the world it failed to see through. It becomes another ghost wandering fields that are not real, living eternities inside a mirage. But if the heart becomes light, light enough to see through symbols, light enough to detach from dream, then the soul awakens again, into a second awakening, a deeper one, a world sharper, colder, more surreal. A world described in the texts as the domain of shifting forms, where nothing stays constant and every step forces the traveler to confront aspects of themselves they never faced in life. Here, the illusions are not comforting, they are disturbing. They test strength, clarity, courage, perception. The traveler encounters beings that appear monstrous, but the texts warn, see them not as monsters, see them as masks. The afterlife is not a place you explore, it is a place that explores you. Imagine walking through a tunnel that lengthens as you walk, walls breathing like lungs, shadows moving without light. You hear voices, your own voice, but from moments you forgot, from years you suppressed, from versions of yourself you never allowed to surface. This is the realm where illusions peel away layers of your identity, a purification not of morality, but of consciousness. Those who reach the end of this realm arrive at the lake of fire, not fire that burns the body, but fire that burns illusion. Touching it destroys everything you still mistake as identity. Most souls hesitate, most turn back, but those who step into the fire awaken fully, into reality beyond illusion, into a state the Egyptians called the Great Opening, the ancient equivalent of enlightenment. But here is where the mystery deepens. Many Egyptian rituals imply that the illusions of the afterlife are not limited to the dead. They imply that living humans are also in a dreamlike state, that life itself is another level of illusion, that we awaken from one dream only to enter another, that death is merely the moment when we notice we were dreaming all along. One passage reads, "Life is the first sleep, death is the second. Truth is the awakening after both." Another says, "The world of sunlight is the world of painted forms." And the most cryptic inscription of all, hidden deep inside a lesser-known pyramid text, "He who dies awakens. He who lives sleeps. He who passes the duat learns that both are illusions." What were they trying to say? That consciousness lives inside nested layers of illusion? That the gods, or someone else, constructed these layers? That waking is not the end of dreaming, but the shift into a deeper dream? Now, imagine the priests who performed these rituals. They did not guide the dead, they guided dreamers. They believed they were training the mind to see through illusion even before death. They performed rites to wake the living from the dream of flesh. They meditated in darkness, entered trance states, described visions identical to the worlds of the duat. They believed the afterlife was not separate from life. They believed it was a parallel realm that could be accessed through altered consciousness. And now imagine this terrifying possibility. What if the illusions described in the afterlife texts were not just metaphors for spiritual growth, but descriptions of an actual system of containment? A system built long before humanity could comprehend it. A system that keeps consciousness cycling through dream states to prevent it from accessing something beyond the constructed layers. The Egyptians may have glimpsed fragments of this system through ritual, trance, and death, and they recorded what they saw. The painted skies, the false fields, the guardians, the mirrors, the layers of dreaming. They believed the greatest danger was not death. It was mistaking illusion for truth. And if that is true, then the question that echoes across time, the question written into temples, papyri, and tomb walls, is more than spiritual. It is existential. What if we are already inside one of the illusions described in the afterlife texts, and death is not the awakening, but only the transition into the next layer of the dream? Imagine a group of NASA scientists in the 1970s, long before the internet could spread rumors, long before whistleblowers could live stream secrets, long before classified files could be leaked with a click. They were not studying pyramids. They were studying radio wave propagation through the Earth's crust. They wanted to understand how signals behave underground, how they reflect, distort, or vanish. Their work was purely technical, until they pointed their equipment toward Giza. And something impossible happened. Something that did not match physics. Something that did not belong there. When they sent radio waves into the ground beneath the Great Pyramid, the signal did not simply reflect. It did not scatter. It did not weaken. It echoed. but not like any normal echo. It returned layered, split into tones, carrying subharmonics, frequencies lower than the original signal, frequencies that should not exist naturally, frequencies that seemed generated intentionally. The underground beneath Giza was not silent. It was vibrating. Imagine the shock inside the control room as the first wave returned. Static at first, then a deep pulse, then a tone too low to be heard by human ears, but strong enough to register on equipment. The scientists stared at the readout in disbelief. It looked like an encoded message, frequency bands rising and falling with mathematical precision. This was not a natural chamber. It was not a cave. It was not just stone and sand. It was something built to resonate, something intelligent. The report was classified. The public never heard it. But fragments leaked over the decades, whispers of oscillating cavities, artificial subharmonic chambers, persistent low-frequency echo signatures. NASA did not know what they had found, but they knew what it wasn't. It wasn't noise. Now, imagine the space beneath the pyramids not as empty desert rock, but as a labyrinth of cavities designed like the interior of a massive instrument. Imagine corridors carved with purpose, chambers cut at angles that amplify vibration, stone boxes placed where resonance converges, the entire underground structure forming a giant resonant amplifier, a machine humming with frequencies older than recorded history. When radio waves entered those spaces, they awakened something dormant. They interacted with pockets of compressed air, crystalline granite, and electromagnetic anomalies that the ancient builders may have engineered deliberately. The echoes came back as subharmonics, frequencies that can influence brainwaves, emotions, intuition. The pyramids were not passive. They were responding. Imagine standing on the sand above one of these chambers. You would feel nothing with your ears, but deep inside your bones, you might sense something, an almost imperceptible hum, like the whisper of a forgotten machine running beneath the ground, a hum that once shaped the consciousness of an entire civilization, a hum that the modern world has forgotten how to hear. Now, imagine NASA digging deeper, running more tests. They discovered that when they changed the frequency of the signal, the pyramid responded differently, as if tuning itself. The echo patterns shifted like the chambers were adjusting, aligning, reframing the returning waves. This is impossible for natural formations. Rocks do not tune themselves. Sand does not shift frequencies on command. Something beneath the pyramid was built to respond. One scientist described the effect anonymously. It was like the structure was alive, not biologically, but acoustically, as if it had a behavior. Imagine the implications. If the underground chambers were built to resonate, they could generate frequencies capable of influencing human sleep, dreams, and consciousness. The same frequencies the Egyptians believed guided them into the afterlife. NASA's radio waves may have accidentally reactivated a faint echo of a system dormant for thousands of years. Now imagine this. What if those subharmonics were once part of a global grid? The pyramids of Giza, Teotihuacan, Angkor, Xi'an, and countless others, aligned with astronomical precision, may have formed a planetary network of frequency generators. NASA's radar detected only the dying heartbeat of this ancient system, a heartbeat still echoing through chambers that have not fully fallen silent. The subharmonics recorded under Giza were below 10 Hz, the same range as delta waves in the human brain, the same frequency associated with deep sleep, unconsciousness, and suggestibility. Imagine an entire civilization sleeping under the influence of a frequency field generated by these structures. Imagine dreams shaped not by chance, but by resonance. Imagine consciousness tuned without anyone realizing. NASA's discovery suggests the underground chambers were built to generate, amplify, or manipulate these delta wave frequencies. The radio waves did not create the subharmonics. They revealed them. They exposed frequencies still trapped in the stone after millennia, like echoes of an ancient dream state that humanity has long forgotten. But here is where the mystery deepens. The subharmonics under Giza were not random. They followed patterns, mathematical ratios consistent with harmonic engineering, ratios used in music, architecture, and sacred geometry, ratios associated with the golden mean, astronomical cycles, and the orbits of celestial bodies. Whoever built these chambers understood resonance not just as a physical force, but as a cosmic principle, They encoded the mathematics of the universe into the earth itself. Imagine ancient architects knowing that the earth vibrates like a drum. They built instruments to amplify it. They built chambers to channel it. They built pyramids to broadcast it. And they built underground cavities to shape it. NASA's radar did not detect empty space. It detected the remnants of a tuning system designed to align human consciousness with the frequency of the planet. But why did it stop working? Why does it hum only faintly now? Maybe because the capstones were removed. Maybe because the casing stones are gone. Maybe because the global grid fractured. Or maybe because someone turned the system off. Someone who knew humanity was no longer ready for the frequencies these structures once generated. NASA, unaware of the ancient system, may have sent signals into a sleeping machine, and the machine answered weakly, like an old leviathan stirring in its slumber, releasing echoes of a forgotten function. Now, imagine the most unsettling possibility. What if the pyramid is waiting for the correct signal to activate again? What if NASA accidentally discovered the activation frequency? What if the subharmonics were not echoes but invitations, responses to a call the machine once recognized? Imagine if one day a frequency is transmitted, intentionally or accidentally, that aligns perfectly with the resonance of the ancient system. Imagine the ground beneath Giza beginning to vibrate. Imagine the chambers lighting up with electromagnetic activity. Imagine a hum rising across the desert loud enough to make the air tremble. Humanity might not be prepared for what the system would awaken, because the system may not be designed for communication. It may be designed for transformation. NASA detected subharmonics, but they did not decode them. They did not understand them. They did not know that they had touched the edge of something that was never meant to be disturbed. And the question that lingers now is this: if subharmonics beneath Giza are the remnants of a sleeping machine, what will happen if someone sends the right frequency again, and the machine finally wakes? Imagine lying down at night believing sleep is a soft, harmless retreat, your mind resting, your body repairing, your consciousness dissolving in a peaceful cycle of oblivion. Imagine trusting that sleep is a sanctuary, a natural pause in the relentless noise of life. But what if this trust is misplaced? What if sleep is not rest at all? What if sleep is the most vulnerable state a human ever enters, because it is the one moment where consciousness is not in charge? What if sleep is not biological necessity, but biological submission? A nightly surrender of the mind of forces you do not see, do not understand, and have never questioned. Think of it. For 1/3 of your life, your awareness is turned off, not because you choose to, but because you must. A command written into your biology. A mandate enforced by something older than your species. What other instinct forces you into helplessness for hours every day, regardless of danger? Animals sleep lightly, with alertness in their bones, but humans fall into deep unconsciousness, dreams, paralysis, mental worlds they cannot escape. Why? Evolution claims rest, repair, memory consolidation. But none of that explains the blackout. None explains the paralysis. None explains the hallucinations. None explains why consciousness must be suppressed rather than quieted. What if sleep is not a biological maintenance cycle, but a maintenance cycle imposed on consciousness? A system that resets you every night, keeping you aligned with rules written long before humanity had language. A system that shapes your emotions, suppresses your rebellions, edits your memories, regulates your instincts. A system you obey without ever realizing you're obeying. Imagine that sleep is not a gentle drift, but a doorway into a domain where consciousness is monitored, adjusted, trimmed. The dreams you think are random may not be random. They might be programming, emotional calibration, fear modulation, identity shaping. You dream of fears you never face in waking life. You dream of people who are dead. You dream of impossible landscapes. Why? What part of evolution needs symbolic hallucinations every single night? The Egyptians believed dreams were messages. The Greeks believed that they were divine manipulation. Many ancient cultures believed sleep was when the soul left the body and entered a realm governed by external forces. Modern science dismisses this as myth, but cannot explain why REM dreams are so vivid, so structured, so emotionally charged that they alter waking behavior. Dreams feel like simulations, or tests, or rehearsals for versions of yourself you will never become. Now imagine the world before artificial light, when humans slept in cycles. the first sleep and the second sleep. People woke at midnight, not fully conscious but not fully dreaming, in a liminal state where they reported visions, voices, encounters. Was this state suppressed over time because it revealed too much? Because it allowed consciousness to wander unsupervised? Sleep changed as civilization grew. Patterns shifted. Dreams became shallower. Something happened that narrowed the door. What if sleep originally allowed humans to access a layer of reality they were not meant to see until someone shut it down? Imagine the pyramids, the temples, the megalithic structures as nodes in a global network. Machines that influenced the sleep cycle through frequency. Machines that tuned human dreams into a collective field. Machines that shaped how entire civilizations perceived reality. Sleep was the mechanism. Dream was the interface. Hieroglyphs were the side effects. Rituals were instructions. Priests were interpreters. Humanity was being tuned. And then imagine that the system weakened. The machines fell silent. The frequency grid collapsed. But the sleep cycle remained, hard-coded into biology by the system that once guided it. Humans no longer receive the signals, but they continue to dream. They continue to enter the domain designed for communication, but now empty, chaotic, unregulated. The system that once controlled sleep is broken, but the mechanism remains. This might explain why so many people today feel lost, anxious, disconnected. They are entering a realm that no longer has structure. They drift in dreams that were once guided, but are now erratic. Humanity is experiencing dream withdrawal, thousands of years after the control system faded. But what if something still uses sleep to reach you? What if something still shapes dreams subtly, quietly, like a whisper in the dark? Nightmares feel targeted. Prophetic dreams feel intentional. Sleep paralysis feels like intrusion. Lucid dreams feel like rebellion. Something about sleep does not feel random. It feels designed. Imagine that every night, as your body falls heavy, your consciousness sinks into a layer that is not inside your brain, but connected to something larger, something shared, something that sees you, hears you, interacts with you. You do not remember most dreams not because they are meaningless, but because they are not meant to be remembered. Because remembering would break the illusion of waking. Dreams are erased like logs from a system that edits what you are allowed to retain. Now imagine this. When you sleep, your brainwaves slow into states that are not just biological, but receptive. Delta waves are trance-like. Theta waves are hypnotic. Alpha waves are suggestible. These states allow information to flow into your unconscious without resistance. Hypnosis works because the boundary of awareness thins. Dreams work the same. Something can speak to you in dreams, and you will wake believing the resulting emotions are your own. What if that is the point? To guide your emotional self, to keep you aligned with a system you cannot see, to prevent you from destabilizing, to ensure that you wake up with fears calibrated, memories softened, desires shaped. What if sleep is the leash? Imagine this possibility. The mind is too powerful when fully awake, too creative, too rebellious, too unpredictable. During sleep, the mind becomes malleable and can be sculpted. A global species must be kept within boundaries to remain stable. Sleep is the boundary, a reset switch, a nightly rewrite that keeps you compatible with societal structures, psychological norms, emotional cycles. Every day you accumulate thoughts that destabilize you, doubts, fears, impulses, visions of a different life. Sleep trims them, disposes of the fragments that could lead you off the path. Dreams dissolve unfinished narratives. Nightmares purge the psyche. This is not rest. It is regulation. But what if the system is failing? What if people today dream too vividly, wake too abruptly, resist too strongly? What if the increasing chaos of the modern world is a sign that the ancient sleep control network is collapsing completely? People wake with anxiety because their dreams are no longer calibrated. They experience sleep paralysis because the transition is unstable. They lucid dream because consciousness is learning to resist the dream state. Sleepwalking, night terrors, fragmented cycles, these are not disorders. They are the symptoms of a species slipping out of a control system. Now, imagine the most dangerous possibility of all. What if waking reality is also part of the illusion? What if sleep is not the cage, but the doorway out of it? What if waking life is the illusion, and dreams are the truth, and the system has been built to make sure you never stay awake in the dream long enough to realize it? Every morning, your mind snaps back into place automatically, like a spring pulled into position. You never ask who built the spring. You never ask why waking consciousness is so rigid. Dreams feel chaotic, not because they are fantasies, but because they are unfiltered. They reveal too much of reality, too much of yourself. You are not allowed to linger there. So, the system ejects you. What if the ancient Egyptians were right? What if waking life is the first dream and sleep is the second? What if both are illusions engineered to keep consciousness contained? And what if the real awakening is something you have never experienced because the system resets you before you reach it? Sleep might not be rest. Sleep might be the cage. And the moment humanity learns to stay conscious through the dream may be the moment the cage finally breaks.